Today we're going to talk about power cables. We are going to show you how to hunt hot cam locks in line. Two of my favorite tools are the amp clamp and the digital thermometer. We're going to use these right now to go hunt down hot cam locks. I'm going to show you how to read the temperatures on the cam locks. Whenever you're reading the temperature, you want to measure it as close to the junction between the wire and the connector as possible. You don't want to read it here because you won't get a good reading through the rubber. You really want to aim right here at the junction. Now, this cable is running 191 amps and it's measuring 108 degrees. The red leg is running 180 amps and it's measuring 100 degrees. Not a problem with any of this. The blue leg is running 157 amps and it's at 101. So all of these are nominal temperatures. None of these cam locks are hot. Now we're at the power box. Let's measure these cam locks and see if any of these are hot. Going down the line, 88 degrees, 89 degrees, 88 degrees. There's a ground, 89 degrees. Not a problem, right? 101, not a problem, right? 144 degrees. Notice a problem? Let's keep going. 107. What do you think, guys? See how you find it? First we make you street smart, how to look for stuff. Then we make you book smart. What have I found? One red Camlock connector passing 180 amps at 100 degrees on one end of the cable and passing that same 180 amps through 144 degrees on the other end of that same cable. In this particular case, I recommended to keep an eye on this connector and whenever possible, replace this cable and change this end. So this brings us to your first logical question is, why are there temperature differences on the same cable? Think about it this way. Temperature is local to the connector, while amperage is global to the cable. This whole cable is passing 180 amps, but it's going to have a different temperature here on this connector as it's going to have on this one. Temperature differential involves many factors. One connector may be inside the air-conditioned building, while the other may be outside in the hot sun. Factor this in when comparing camlock temperatures. We just saw 191 amps cleanly passing through a 108 degree camlock, so we know what low resistance through clean copper looks like. Pro tip: always twist your camlocks 180 degrees when you connect them. The camlock connectors get snug at 90 degrees, but they're only fully locked at 180 degrees. Another lesson you're about to see is heat building up on two connected camlocks. Remember, heat is local. If you have two camlocks connected together and there's heat on both connectors, the bigger concern is on the hot side. Let me explain. If you're reading 160 to 180 degrees on this side, but you're reading much hotter on this side, let's assume that this is bad first and change this end first. This could just be a case of heat transferring through the connectors. And now let's flash back to the situation we found on Patriot, and I'll show you why I was so concerned. We're running Patriot on two sets of 4-aught power cable. This is a 250 amp power box, and things are heating up, which means that we must have an old Camlock connector in line. We'll find it with the digital thermometer. We took a digital thermometer and walked the power cable run to determine which Camlock connectors were of concern.
The red one is 102, the black one is 147, and the blue one is 228. That black line is reading 145, 170 on that side, and it's reading 228 right there.
If you're reading hot temperatures like that, you either have a loose connection or you've got corrosion or resistance in one of the connectors. Loose connections could be from loose hex nuts in the connector, loose lugs in the power box, maybe the cable was strained, or a camlock that isn't fully seated. But before we go hacking off camlock connectors, first we have to discuss a few ridiculously interesting pictures. Let's compare 4-aught to 2-aught. On the left is a prime example of single wall power cable that is 4-aught. And on the right, we have a double-walled entertainment cable that is 2-aught. The double-walled 2-aught looks like the 4-aught, but it's lighter and it only handles about half the load. You can't judge a power cable just from the diameter, the thickness, or its weight. So along the edge, look for the marking right there that says 4-aught. If you're running more than 10 feet from a disconnect box, then the cable you use has to match the maximum load of what you're hooking up to. So a 200 amp breaker requires a 2-aught cable or higher. A 400 amp disconnect requires a 4-aught cable or higher. How far back do you cut the power cable to install a shiny new Camlock connector? The answer is look for shiny copper wire, not shiny gold wire. Let's look closely at this old connector and see what we can learn. First, let's look at the connector. It's pressed. This is a factory-made cable. This connector has passed a lot of power in its day. It's seen a lot of heat, and it's also seen a lot of weather. Look at the corrosion right at the connector. This is where the heat builds up. This is where the damage happens. This copper is brittle and oxidized. Let's keep moving up the cable looking for good wire. Here's some shiny gold color. Here's why this isn't good enough. It's discolored. Gold isn't copper. So this section has already seen some heat, or it would still be shiny copper. What can heat do? I'll show you. Look a little further up the cable. Look, right there. 2 broken strands. And these are just the ones that we can see. Okay then, let's keep looking for shiny copper wire. Oh look, here's some. Let's install the new connector right here where it has the best chance of not heating up. You always want to start with clean, shiny copper wire. First, we're going to need a tool to cut through the cable. Then we're going to need a 7/32 Allen for the hex nuts. We'll need a razor knife to cut through the insulation. And it also helps to have a Camlock tool like this one right here. Before the turn of the century, we used to have to make our own Camlock tools, so consider yourselves lucky. Quick note, there are actually 2 sizes of hex nuts, 7/32 and 1/4 inch. These are Camlock connectors from the same manufacturer.
Come on. There it is.
First thing you need to do is you need to trim off the boot at the line that matches the cable that you're attaching it to. You slide the boot onto the cable, all the way up, all the way up. Beautiful. So we're going to measure using this to tell us where to trim back the insulation. We want to trim the insulation back that far back. Whenever you're attaching the strain relief to the insulation, you don't want to twist it like this because you'll leave a big gap at the bottom, and you want that gap to not be there. So a pro tip is to, before you start, bend these guys all the way across past each other before you start the twist. That puts this junction right up against the insulation. So whenever you're installing this new connector, you want to tighten this hex nut first. What it does is this will grab the cable before you press this one in, because the problem is these hexes have rounded bottoms on them, and when they go down, sometimes if you tighten this one first, it will push the cable out and you'll end up with cable outside of the connector on this side. So you want to always tighten this one up first so that it grabs the cable, and then tighten the other one up. Next, push the cable into the connector body. You always want to tighten that one up first, get it snug. It'll hold the wire in there. Okay, so we've got it snug using this type of a hex, but this hex can't get them tight enough. We really need to use this version of the 7/32. This will give you the leverage to get these really tight, which is what they need to be. This connector has to be tight. Nice. I might only get one of these out of my hand model today. Oh, it's beautiful. It's nice and snug. All right, now we're gonna lube just the very end of it with some WD-40. Using the Camlock tool, slide the boot over the connector and line up the holes for the retaining pin. Pro tip, always know your stock of Camlock connectors. Have your spares ready. Make sure that all of your spare Camlock connectors are for 4/0 cable. Pro tip, here's a really good idea to avoid needing tie lines for power cable at strike. With this system, all the power cables with green ropes went to one truck. All the power cables with red ropes went to the other truck. Slick, genius. Pro tip, always elevate any power cables when you're dealing with snow and ice. This keeps the power cables from freezing to the ground and ensures that your strike will stay on schedule. Pro tip, always over under your power cables. Some people will tell you not to, but over-under is the right way. Here's just one example of what happens to over power cables. Those kinks are no joke. So always make sure your power cables are put away properly. This video wouldn't be complete without an update on the bad cam locks that we found. At this point, all the hot cam locks have been addressed and replaced, and this is the corrosion that we found. Thank you for watching these training videos. Thank you for your feedback, and have a good show.